What's going on, guys? Making a video today because I got a comment from a viewer. His name is Cudham. He asked, or his comment was basically saying, "Hey, I'd like to learn more about solar. Should I buy or should I build my own system?" So I put together some notes. We'll take a few minutes, go over, and just kind of see if this is a topic you're actually interested in. Try and stick around to the end. But for the most part, let's just get into some things. Quick disclaimer: electricity is dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing, get some training, get some help. You know, ask somebody that is experienced and skilled because it can kill you. So, if I was going to give you a negative right off the bat, you're working with electricity, so make sure you're confident and comfortable before proceeding with any of this. All right, let's look at a few quick questions that maybe you should ask yourself. What do you plan on using it for? Do you only plan on having one small system, or do you plan on expanding the system in the future? And how often do you plan on using it? Are you going to use it intermittently? Are you going to use it frequently? Or are you going to use it continuously? So, example of intermittent is just going to be power outage, disaster. So, this thing's going to spend most of its life sitting on a shelf, minimal use. Frequent, you're going to do a lot of camping, travel, or just working outside. Something I tend to do with mine a lot is I take it out, and we have a community trail out here. I do volunteer work out there, so I bring it out, and then I'm not running generators. It's easy to move around, and it's free electricity because I just bring it home, plug it right back into my solar panel. Or do you plan on running it continuously? Like you're going to run your freezers in, say, grid down, power outage, something along those lines, or just continuous running of it. So, start off by answering those questions. The next question you got to follow it up with is, what do you plan on powering? Are you powering refrigerators, small fans, large fans, lighting, pumps, microwaves, coffee makers, or just charging cell phones? So the scale of that changes based on what you're trying to power, how much you're trying to power. So if something's going down, are you continuously going to run 5 refrigerator freezers because that's going to determine how big of a size you need? Or are you just planning on running a small box fan and your coffee maker once or twice a day? So these are all the questions that you kind of have to run down the list to figure out. Another thing to look at: do you enjoy doing DIY projects? If you're not used to, let's say, building like IKEA furniture, or just you don't really like hands on with a lot of things, or you don't really enjoy doing mechanical work, maybe building it is not what you would enjoy or really follow through with. It is a bit of a project. I mean, you spend a lot of time starting from scratch. What am I powering? How much am I powering? How frequent am I using? So now you have to establish that. Then you actually have to start building the system to match what you plan on doing. And the safe rule is always to go a little bit bigger than what you need, because one, expansion always happens. Two, the sun doesn't always produce as much as you think it should. So let's say a system like a Jackery, and I'll be kind of using Jackery as an example because they're a good low budget, system that you can readily buy off the box. I actually was in Costco the other day, and I saw some different setups they have, and I'll go over those here in a few minutes, and positives and the negatives to those. But let's say something like a small pre-built Jackery, I would look at that more as like an intermittent to frequent use. So something spends a lot of time on the shelf. It can be used, continuously, but I don't see anything on full longevity tests on these things. I would assume you'll wear them out pretty quick, but I could be wrong. It's not like they've sent me one to check, which, I mean, I'm not asking either. So if it's going to sit on the shelf most of its life, if you're going to do, lots of traveling, camping, it's easily portable. They're set up, they're ready to go. There's minimal work you have to do. You just take it out of the box, plug in your solar panel, you're good to go. So there's a positive to it right off the bat. You know, they're ready to go. It's easy to learn as a beginner to get going with, right? So the majority of what you're doing is you're just taking a prepackaged item out of the box, you plug a panel into it, and it just works. So, I mean, if you don't feel like doing a whole lot of engineering and mechanical work, and then you're doing the wiring, and you're putting everything together, it's a simple solution. And I mean, it's not a bad solution. I'm not downing on having any of these systems. The reason I choose to build mine instead of buy them is, sorry, I got a light that's freaking out here, but the reason I choose to build instead of buy is, one, I can typically get more for my money in the same system, and you know, I have a much better understanding on how the system's operating. If there's anything that's acting up, then I can flow through. Which, I mean, electronics, you typically don't have too many issues, but stuff breaks. Everything breaks. You can't buy anything that's not going to break at some point. Some of the limits to having one of these, say, pre-built Jackeries, limited battery expansion. Some you can buy expansion batteries, some you just can't. So it is what it is. Limited solar input. I mean, they're in control of the size of the charge controller that's connected to it. So there's your limitation. You can't go inside of their equipment and start changing things out and increase it, or you know, add on to it very easily. Typically a higher cost for a similar quality, and it is what it is. All right, so you're buying something that somebody did the math on it. Somebody did the assembly. They built a nice little case for it, and you know, it's got all your extra USB Cs, and all your 12 volt, you know, junction ports. So, I mean, it's set, it's ready, it's good to go. It's a simple solution, and if you don't plan on building some big massive system, or you don't plan on, you know, expanding it in the future, then it's not a bad way to go. Benefits. All right, let's talk about some of the custom built ones. One, you know, it's made for all situations. You can take it anywhere because it's portable. You can scale it up, you can scale it down. You can, let's say you decide one day you want to run a 3,000 watt inverter, and then you put on a little 200 to 500 watt inverter as well. 2 to 500 watt inverter is going to use, you know, much less draw just for the inverter use than you know, 3,000 watt would. So that's why it would be kind of smart to have that, because now you can kind of adapt and adjust and change, and you can play with it. You'll typically get better quality components when you build it yourself, because you get to pick the components you use, so you can do some research. You know, in a pre-built system, as any manufacturer is going to do, they're going to cut costs as much as they possibly can. You know, and if something's got a 5-year warranty, there's a pretty good chance it's only going to make it that 5 years. But sometimes they come with a warranty, so if you plan on using it a lot, let them repair it. But make sure the company is good with, you know, following through with their warranties. They're easily expandable, so you can add more batteries, you can add more solar, you can add more inverters, or bigger inverters, or smaller inverters. So you can fine tune your system to what you're needing. Easy troubleshooting, it's customizable, and I'm going to shoot this light here in a few minutes. Gotta love it, new LEDs. So some of the limitations and negatives to it. You're the one assembling it. You're doing all the work. You're doing all the math. So guess what? You get to be an engineer, and you get to be the contractor building it and assembling it. And you're the warranty. So if something breaks, guess what? It's you paying for it. But I mean, there's not a lot of negatives to it. I mean, it still does fall back to, you know, answer those questions at the beginning, because if you don't plan on using it a whole bunch, you're putting a lot of extra work and energy and time into something that is just going to sit on the shelf. Like mine, my big one, I have used it numerous times. Like I love this thing. I take it everywhere that I can take it when I need it. And then I'm not running a loud gas generator while I'm trying to work outside in the country. You know, it's nice to be in the woods and just work. Without earplugs, I should say. All right, let's take a quick look at just some I try to do like a cost to cost comparison. I was in Costco last week and I saw they had the Jackery E1000s with solar, and it comes with a 100-watt panel. It was $799.99. So let's just call it 800. It came with a 1,000 amp or 100 amp hour battery, which could handle roughly 4,000 cycles. It's a Life PO4, so that's your standard battery you're going to use if you're using lithium iron. So 100 amp hour battery. 5-year warranty it comes with. It's a 2,000 watt inverter with a 4,000 watt peak. Comes with a 5-year warranty. Again, warranties are always questionable, right? They're always going to try and get out of the warranty, but having a warranty is better than not having a warranty. This one is designed with an 800 watt max solar input, so you can take up to 800 watts to charge it. It has a 1 hour wall charger that you just plug in, and 1 hour your battery's fully charged. That's pretty awesome. I don't have that built into mine. I just use a lithium iron phosphate battery charger. It's like a 40 amp. You can get bigger, you can get better, but that's pretty good. I'm not going to knock that at all. It comes with 3 AC output plugs, which, my inverter, the Renogy I have, it has 3 plugs on it as well. It also has, I believe, a USB port on it, so I can, plug in a standard USB. So, it's not a bad deal. $800 for, a 100 amp hour battery, a 100 watt solar panel, which you can use a lot more than 100 watts, which, the benefit to that, 800 watt max. So, decent setup. I wouldn't say it's top of the tier, top quality, but it's a functional system. And again, for intermittent use, don't drop $12,000 on some, ready-made, stackable. It's got 12 inverters and all the bells and whistles, when all you really need is just something simple like this. I would say battery expansion would be really good if you can get one for it, because a 100 amp hour battery, it's got a 2,000 watt inverter on it, but it only has 100 or 1,200 watt hours, right? So you can kill this thing in 30 minutes at max use. So increase your battery expansion if you can. But again, some of these pre-built, you may not be able to. This one comes with a foldable panel, which is pretty cool. It's nice to have it because it's less storage space, right? If I'm gonna bring out my 400 watt solar panel, that's gonna take up the whole roof rack of my car. So it does have a warranty. The question is, how good is that warranty? Always do reviews, check things out, look at it. It's easily portable and it's ready out of the box. That's a great way to start, right? You can at least start. Let's say you go with a smaller system, because you can buy systems as small as, I think, I looked on Amazon, had basically a starter kit for 120 bucks. So if you want to kind of get a inexpensive way to get into it and really start learning and understanding it, and even seeing if it just works, that's not a bad way to go. Because I almost couldn't build you a system for $120. Now mind you, this is low wattage, low amperage. You're not going to do a whole bunch with it, but it's a good tester system. So to compare the Jackery E1000 with the 100 watt solar panel, I saw a bunch of different options for it, but that's the one that they had at Costco. I tried to build the exact same system. Remember, theirs was $800. I was able to build the system for $758. And these are all Amazon listed components. And boy, I'm really going to shoot that light. So I went with a 2,000 watt inverter, so similar to what they had, 2,000 watt, 4,000 watt peak. I went with the Belt, BELTTT inverter, so should be basically what they have. 100 amp hour battery. There's a company on there, Dynas. Their battery was 179. You could do a charge controller. I looked at the Ampin VT 60 amp. That is a 900 watt solar input. for 12-volt system. And that one's $155. The nice thing about this though is that same charge controller will work for 12 volts all the way up to 48 volts. So you got flexibility. You decide you want to build your system larger, you want to go ahead and add more batteries to it, make it a 48 volt system. There's a lot of benefits to that, and at some point I should do a video on that. You'd need like a box to assemble everything in. I did a video on one here recently that basically all I did was use a battery box from Walmart. It was like about 20 bucks, so you can assemble everything inside of it. If you were to buy the 100-watt panel for what they have, I went on Amazon, you can get 2 panels for $139. So you're already getting 100 extra watts on the charge controller. Now you're adding 100 extra watts of solar to build the exact same system, and I'm already $40 cheaper, $42 cheaper. And then I factored in probably about $100 for wiring, because you figure you have the solar string wire, then a couple battery cables, and if you've got the stuff, then it doesn't cost you anything. The disadvantages to doing this are going to be there's no warranty, you're doing the assembly, and there's no 1-hour charger. The immediate advantages is going to be $40 cheaper, 100 watts more solar input, and 200 watts of solar instead of 100 watts. So you're already getting an increase in what you've done, and you built the exact same system for less money. But I mean, how much is your time worth too? Because you save $40, you get a little bit more solar and a little bit more solar input. So if you've already got an existing system, you just plug it in and charge it up faster. But it's also costing you time. So what's your time worth? That's a good question to ask yourself. So, I mean, if you're trying to learn about it, I mean, my recommendation would be start with something really small. Buy the $120 system and get a feel for what solar can do. Because first off, you want a base foundation to understand when it's working, when it's not working. So don't go crazy right off the bat, because with any project, somebody gets into, they're like, I'm going to do this, and they spend $3,000-$4,000. They buy a whole bunch of equipment, and then it just sits there, and they never do anything with it. And then you go on Facebook Marketplace, it's littered with people just selling stuff they never used. So again, with the Facebook Marketplace, you can probably find some pretty cheap stuff. But build a foundation, get to understanding, a 12-volt system. 12-volt system, 48-volt is not very different at all. It's essentially just your car system. Then start looking at the basics of 110. I mean, if you're hooking up a inverter that's already got the plugs built into it, there's no wiring involved. So you're literally just turning on your house switch, and your house is being powered by your car. I mean, that's the simplest way to break the system down. So if you don't have an understanding of those two systems, I would look into that. I would also look into maybe just starting with one of these little tiny kits that you can kind of play with. You can see how long it takes to charge it. You can see what it's doing when there's not a lot of sun, when there is a lot of sun. You can kind of see how well solar panels are performing. So, I mean, if you feel comfortable doing the wiring and doing the research, build your own system, because you'll get more for it. If you're starting from ground one, square one, the best thing to do is get the low cost education and then kind of build your way up. All right, well, that's basically all I got to say. Hopefully it helps you out. If you got any questions, put them in the bottom. If there's anything you want me specifically to talk about, let me know. All right, guys, thanks.